again, I would like to thank you all for joining us today. Our session is on sustainability, and we have our special guest, Sean from Lawson's Finest. I'm going to pass it over to our internal team here at Yakima Chief, Levi and Andy, so you guys take it away.
Hey, good morning, everybody. My name is Levi Wyatt. Thanks for joining us here, Sean, Andy. It's amazing, given the virtual harvest, we're all connecting from all sorts of time zones and all over the world. So happy to be sitting down and talking to you guys today, specifically about sustainability. Did we want to do some introductions real quick? Andy, I think you're muted.
Yeah, thanks. All right. So my name is Andy Arsenal. I'm the Key Accounts Division Lead for Yakima, and I'll be moderating this event, this talk. Just wanted to thank Levi and Sean for taking time out of their busy day to talk about the importance of sustainability. Levi, if you want to do another introduction or just to say.
Yeah. I'm Levi. I've been with YCH for about two years now. My role in the company is our corporate social responsibility coordinator. Try saying that 10 times fast. It's very difficult. But really the goal of my position is to align our company's mission, vision, and values into our business decisions, how we go about volunteering and organizing that philanthropic lever of our company, as well as our environmental lever. As we're an ag-based industry, there's an increased importance on how we treat the planet. So we try to do that in our day-to-day business.
Sean, if you want to give a quick intro.
Yeah, I'm Sean Lawson with Lawson's Finest Liquids. We're located here in Waitsfield, Vermont. Is where our headquarters are, and a very proud user of many pounds of Yakima Chief hops. And thrilled to join you guys. Thanks for inviting me to talk about our sustainability efforts at Lawson's Finest Liquids.
Great, thanks guys. So the first question is going to be, we're going to jump right in here for Sean. I guess what prompted Lawson's Finest to get involved in environmental and social issues, and why is it so important to your company?
Well, that could be a long story, Andy, but I'll give you the short version.
Let's hear it.
And it's the same thing that prompted me to get into beer is what prompted me to get into sustainability, and that was being a college student at the University of Vermont. Way back when, in the late 80s and the early 1990s. And let me start with the beer. A friend of mine in college, Matt Robinson, was an avid home brewer, and he invited me over one day to try out his beer. And he cracked open one of his home brews, which was like a red ale, and he poured up a couple glasses. I tried it out. It's like, wow, you made this? He's like, yeah, I made this. I'm like, no way, man. This is like better than anything that you could buy in the store. And I was like, I'm amazed. So next thing I said, of course, is, can you show me how? And he's like, sure. So I ran out, bought a homebrew kit. And next thing you know, 2 weeks later, I'm cooking up my first batch of homebrew in my apartment in downtown Burlington, Vermont. And at the time, I was not pursuing a career in beer. I was pursuing a career in environmental science. I was an environmental studies major. And of course, as a young person, I was naively optimistic enough to think that I could save the world, And so those values still, in maybe a less naive way, live and carry on forward. To think every day about how I can do my part to be a responsible citizen. And so after 15 years of pursuing a career in environmental science, outdoor education, and forestry, I pivoted in a big way to open a brewery 12 years ago. And so when we started the business from the very beginning, even our very small beginnings, it was important that to me and to my wife and I, that we conserve resources. So to try to minimize our impact in terms of the consumption of resources, to buy the most efficient equipment that we could to minimize our impact on use of water and wastewater, but also to give back to our community. Even as a very small brewery, we saw the value in being, sort of a corporate leader or sponsor, even though we weren't too corporate as a one-man show. But it was important to our core values to give back through charitable giving to causes that are near and dear to our heart in our communities. So it's kind of a two-prong answer on the both the sustainability and the commitment to environmental and social issues there. There's a lot more I could say, but in a nutshell, really the inspiration was my love of the outdoors, my interest as a environmental studies student back in college, and carrying those forward into the core values of our company.
Sure, that's a great response there, Sean. I guess, what are some of the positive impacts of a focus like this on your business?
Well, first and foremost, we feel good out of our business that we're, breweries can be pretty intensive, resource intensive businesses. As a very small brewer, starting in a building next to my house, I learned right away that wastewater was one of the key impediments to growing a brewery. And so even at that time, by adopting best practices, which weren't as widely practiced in 12 years ago, for wastewater and really side streaming everything that we could possibly, which certainly wasn't as common among smaller brewers. I think that was even before craft beer was in wide use. We called ourselves micro brewers, or in my case, a nano brewer. So in my case, it meant putting less wastewater down the drain. So that was a good impact. Secondly, even a very small brewery and continuing forward to the state-of-the-art brewery that we've built here in Waitsfield, we use less energy by spending a little bit more up front on capital equipment that's really highly efficient. So we consume less energy, whether it's electricity or propane, and it just all comes back to feeling good about our business because it meets the core values, and then it also hits the bottom line in dollars and cents. And having a brewery that's very efficient means that we do well on our cost of goods sold.
Great. This one's for Levi. Do you want to answer that same question again? So what prompted YCH to get involved with environmental social issues, and then why is it important to your business?
Yeah, I mean, personally as well, I also have a near and dear love for the outdoors, hiking, skiing, backpacking, you name it. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest and also went to school, studied environmental studies. So that's kind of funny to make that connection there with you, Sean. But as YCH has evolved over the years, I think I said in the intro, being a multi-generational agricultural dependent company, it's inherently important for us to ensure that we're doing right year in and year out in the fields to ensure that we can harvest next year, right? And so we like to say we're making more of an impact by making less of one. So we're doing that through the use of more natural fertilizers, reducing those synthetics, creating buffer streams to reduce that runoff going into the tributaries or other streams surrounding our farms. But then really just carrying that through into operations. Our job at YCH is to preserve that quality of that hop, so we don't necessarily want you guys to have that dirt from the field into your pint glass, but we really want to keep that genuine and integrity of the work that was done in the fields throughout our process. So YCH has really stepped up to the plate in terms of reducing our overall energy use, whether that's through electricity, natural gas consumption, finding new innovative ways to incorporate engineering and sustainability together. This is kind of an evolving thing. It's a journey, not necessarily a destination, right? I like that terminology a lot. Some things you come out of the gate and you're like, wow, this is going to work really, really well. And then come to find out it maybe doesn't mesh so well with other things. But as a company, I think we're not scared to kind of push that envelope when it comes to identifying environmental solutions for some problems that we have identified throughout the years. And as a company, we rely on the people around us in our community. So being able to give back in whatever way we can, we're very blessed to be able to do so. And it doesn't come at the, it comes at a good time right now. You know, like there's a lot of people that are struggling with COVID, the pandemic. We just had the big smoke storm come through here. I was just chatting with Andy before we went live. It's amazing to see the sunshine after a week and a half. I know there's still people experiencing smoke throughout the West Coast, but we're trying to do whatever we can to do right by our community as well as the environment. So.
Great, thanks, Levi. I guess what are some of the positive impacts based on that for the company?
Yeah, I mean, really just getting out there with our community members, like to see the smiles and like that are received when either receiving like a monetary donation or boots on the ground volunteerism is huge. I think that's like the biggest impact that we can give as a company is really making a difference with, we're a local company with a global presence, but we're really trying to find ways where we can bridge that gap and provide relief or reprieve from certain situations, natural disasters being one of them that's ever prevalent right now. But yeah.
Cool. All right, Sean, another question for you. What would you consider to be the largest area of focus for your brewery and community in regards to sustainability?
I would say, well, there's the largest area of focus, I think, again, would be efficiency, and both in the amount of resources we consume and what we produce for waste. And that ties into several different areas. So in those, you know, the two topics that I was, you know, really looking at focusing on today were renewable energy. So we've invested and we're continuing to invest in renewable energy here in Waitsfield so that we can consume less electricity and get the sun to power our brewery. And then on the other end of the production, that's the front end. Then at the tail end, it's about being as sustainable as possible with our wastewater, both driving down the amount of wastewater that we produce and being in a rural area, we needed to address and it's our number one capacity constraint is wastewater. So we'll talk more about that in the slides, but those are two of the areas that really stand out as key focus for sustainability. But also you mentioned it in the first question, it's about community as well, and our tie to the local community and the way that we give back to our local community helps sustain us and our brand into the future, because people believe in not only the quality of our beer, but the quality of the work that we do, and they align with the values that we have as a company.
Great. Levi, same question. What would you consider to be the largest area of focus for YCH when it comes to sustainability?
Yeah, we continue to grow as a company. I know coming on 2 years ago, I think our total number for full-time employees is somewhere around 300, and we're almost to 400 now. So we are growing exponentially, but with that, we're also developing new land. Like we've acquired a new building out in Sunnyside. And so how are we able to, I guess I would echo what John was saying, from an operational standpoint, with this growth, how can we minimize the amount of impact that we are also accruing at the same time? So very similar, we've been working on a few projects that we'll also talk about later in the presentation, but you know, an increased investment in renewable energy, some projects that kind of create that closed loop economy. So we're able to pull things back into production that normally would have been vented out, and really trying to repurpose things for a second life, you know. But also, we do live in the Yakima Valley with 75% of hops coming from this specific region. We rely on our community members as whether it's ag workers or just people within the brewery scene to really kind of advocate for us as well as advocating for them. So to find some sort of common ground there and donating, whether it's through like charitable donations like our community blends or boots on the ground. We do every year a large scale volunteer day with our people at YCH. This year was a little bit different, obviously due to current climate of the world, but we're looking forward to when we can all kind of reunite again and make some positive change here within our local community. But it's more of a nice idea than, sorry, at Yakima Chief community is a little bit more than like a nice idea. It's like one of our chief commitments as a company, and we also encourage our employees to actively participate in their communities on the company for like, sorry, in their companies. Sorry, I'm reading off a script here, boys. We encourage our employees to actively participate in their communities on company time for nonprofits that are near and dear to their hearts. That was a tongue twister, but what I'm trying to say here is we're allowing our employees opportunities to go out and volunteer on their own time for companies and organizations that they're really passionate about. So whether or not they're passionate about beer 9 to 5, they can go find something outside of work that they're really gung-ho about and have some fun with that.
Awesome. Thanks, Levi. All right, now I'm going to share my screen and we're going to look at some slides of or pictures of some slides. Let me see if I can get this going. All right, can we see that presentation?
Yep.
All right. All right, Sean, you're up. So I guess slide I got, just let us know what's on here.
Well, this is a view you can't really see much from here, but this is an artist's rendering of the view from Route 100, which is the main highway that runs through Waitsfield, Vermont. We're right in the center of the state of Vermont. We're out in the Green Mountains. I like to joke that Waitsfield is not really on the way to anywhere except a beautiful place in the world and to world-class ski areas. And hopefully a lot of folks consider us a world-class destination here at Lawson's Finest as well. But what you're looking at is on the far left-hand side, the front tree obscures the brewery and taproom location. And then straight ahead, you see a little building that looks a little bit like what we call a sugar house here in Vermont. It's got that cupola on top. And that's where our wastewater treatment building is located. And so because we're in a rural area, there's no municipal wastewater plant here in Waitsfield, Vermont. There is a municipal there's municipal water, which is beautiful soft water provided from a well into an aquifer up on Scrag Mountain, but no wastewater. So we had to build our own wastewater treatment plant, which was a really significant investment. And even so, we have a hard cap currently on the number of gallons per day of wastewater that we can produce. So we put in what I'd like to think is state of the art wastewater treatment. And so the water, when it comes in, for those of you that are familiar with brewery wastewater, comes in at about, it is, anywhere from, even with side streaming, 3,000 to 8,000 milligrams per liter or parts per million BODs, which is your biochemical oxygen demand. And that's a measure of organic loading in the wastewater. And organic loading is very hard on wastewater treatment plants and is not good to discharge out into the environment. It can kill fish and that kind of, and other life. So because of the demand for oxygen. So in any event, we put it in at 3,000 to 8,000 parts per million. And on the tail end, it comes out, it goes through sand filter and UV. So it's basically, sanitized, clean water, and we get it down to sometimes as low as 4 or 5 parts per million. Your standard household, whereas generally around 250 parts per million, 250 to 300 parts per million. So it's exceptionally clean, and it goes into a groundwater discharge. Not ground. It doesn't go into groundwater, but it goes into the ground in a leach field, which is right sort of behind us, where from the photographer or the visual rendering that's across the street from this plant. But for us, it was a really significant investment in both in cost and scale. Fortunately, we had the space and enough land to put this in, and it was one of the big hurdles to opening up a brewery in a rural area. But I'm really proud of the investment here, that it allows us to discharge clean water back into the ground, so it's a full, like you mentioned, Levi, like the closing the loop. So we're using water, and our wastewater that goes back into the ground is really clean when it leaves our treatment facility.
You guys have a full-time wastewater operator on staff, Sean, or who takes care of that?
Yeah, we have actually a licensed operator that we contract with because they have to be certified by the state of Vermont to operate this wastewater treatment plant. And then our maintenance staff is also trained and can do daily checks, daily maintenance. But we are monitoring the quality of the wastewater continuously through data logging, and then it goes off to an independent lab every week as well, just to verify the in-house measurements and get some additional chemistry that we don't measure in-house.
Okay, great. All right, next slide.
One of the things I haven't mentioned, so now you can see the beautiful tap room and retail store building that we built here in Waitsfield, the brewery to the left with the silos. We'll see some of the solar panels soon. But this walkway, what I wanted to say about the walkway here is that in thinking about our place in the community, we are basically in the village of Irisville. Even looks like there's nothing but trees here. We are in the commercial district of Waitsfield. And it was really important to us to enhance the pedestrian connectivity here in the village, because the road that we're on, Carroll Road, it didn't have any sidewalks, so there was no connection up to Route 100, where there is a sidewalk that goes through town and connects to the other businesses, the supermarkets, the banks, the gas stations, all the other stores that are here in the center of our valley. That's sort of the most commercial district. And so we built a series of boardwalks, because to the left of the photo is actually a wetlands area. And so the boardwalk minimized our impact in creating a pedestrian walkway. And we did the same along Carroll Road. We built a combo of boardwalk where the pedestrian way is close to Carroll, to the wetlands, and then gravel sidewalk path where it's not near the wetlands. And we were able to provide a connection to the main sidewalk on Route 100, which is just maybe a 1/10 of a mile up Carroll Road to the main route through town. And then you can just barely see it in sort of the middle of the boardwalk. You might be able to tell that there's a little section of boardwalk just below the silos that goes off to the left. And that section of boardwalk goes through the wetlands, which amazingly enough, a beaver moved in this spring and completely transformed this very thickly shrub, swampy type wetland into a big open beaver pond. The beavers have been busy chopping down trees and increasing the diversity of the habitat down there. And that boardwalk connects over to the commercial plaza that's next to us, where there's a bank and a coffee shop and the local supermarket, the post office, and a number of the hardware store, a number of service businesses over there. So you can walk from that commercial district right over to our place as well. You don't have to drive. You can come and park in one place in Waitsfield. So that's what I wanted to say about the boardwalk, and also to show off the beautiful location that we have here in Waitsfield.
Awesome. That's great, Sean. Does this beaver have a name?
I'm sure somebody's given it a few names, but I don't. I have one for it. Busy Beaver. Apparently, the beaver has been The beaver started a family down there. I haven't seen the young ones, but apparently, people have cited 3 or 4 beavers down there, and there's a couple of young ones. So
Great. Moving in.
it's interesting. Beavers provoke different reactions from different people. Some people are like, oh no, the beavers have moved in. They're going to ruin the boardwalk. We got to get rid of them or drain the pond. And I'm like, no, 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 no.
Yeah.
We don't want to touch the beavers. There are other
No.
people who are like, this is amazing. Now the boardwalk essentially goes through the beaver pond. So this is a close-up picture here of our wastewater treatment plant. It's a series. It's a very complex system. It's actually very simple, I like to joke. And so the simplicity of it is it's basically just a series of tank pumps, flow, aeration, so bubblers where we're adding air and oxygen to the wastewater, and bugs. So we use microbes to break down and sequester the organic loading that's in our wastewater. So the very first tank is a solids holding tank. And so that's where solids get pumped back to accumulate from different points in the system. And then there's an equalization tank, so a really big reservoir where a lot of wastewater can gather. That tank is about 22,000 gallons. And so it provides an opportunity to both equalize the flows, so the flow rates, and also the pH, because some of the discharge from the brewery is, of course, very caustic with the cleaners, so it's very alkaline. And then some of it's very acidic with the acid-based cleaners and sanitizers that we use in the brewery. So that helps it all equilibrate, and we also dose the water, the wastewater at that point. Before it moves forward, we have a pH probe and several other meters in there, including a DO meter. So we're monitoring the dissolved oxygen there to make sure there's enough oxygen for the next and most important stage, which is the MBBR. And so an MBBR is a moving bed biofilm reactor. So what that means in layperson terms is that there's a bunch of bugs in there, and they love the organic load that comes from brewery. And so they're constantly reproducing, dying, and sloughing off and turning into, very sort of benign sludge down at the bottom. And so that sludge gets pumped out, and some of it goes back to the sludge holding tank or the solids holding tank at the beginning. And then the rest of the wastewater moves on to 2 trickling filters. So they're giant fermenter shaped tanks in the ground. That's one of the things I loved about the system was the sort of the visual symbology to a ferment that it has a cone-shaped bottom to it. And what happens is after the wastewater goes through the moving bed biofilm reactor and the bugs chew up and sequester all the organic carbon in there, they go through another 2 filters where it's a bunch of plastic media, which you'll also find in the MBBR, but these are just stacked up, and instead of being immersed in the water trickles down through the bed, and the rest of the organic load is removed and filtered out at that point. So then it goes off to the wastewater treatment building where we test it, where it gets filtered through the sand filter, where we're continuously monitoring it with our system of computers and PLC, and then it gets pumped out to the leach field across the street, and it comes out very clean at the other end.
Sound like an environmental engineer, Sean.
I did not know how much I would learn about wastewater processing when we endeavored to start building this new brewery in Waitsfield. And my construction manager and I used to joke that we had researched so many systems and gotten all the skinny on it. And I visited all the vendors at the CBC a few years ago. That we were going to open up our own consulting business for breweries and looking for wastewater treatment solutions.
Sure,
because we
sure.
were very well versed in all the different types of systems, whether they were
Nice.
membrane based or tank based or anything else that you could use out for breweries.
Awesome.
So this is a rendering of our newest addition to our site, and so this is a solar canopy that we were planning to build across the street, and it's going to go over our parking lot. Currently, we haven't seen it yet. Maybe does one of the pictures you have, Andy, show the solar panels on the roof of the brewery? Or are we going to see that?
This one?
Okay. No, maybe we didn't give that one to you. Well, suffice it to say that the brewery is covered with solar panels, the roof of the brewery. That brewery you can see with the silos on it. But even though we covered the entire surface area of the brewery with solar panels, because a brewery is, a heavy electrical user, that solar installation only covers about 10% of our electricity needs for the year. Of course, we're located in Vermont, which isn't the sunniest place, and we are in a northern latitude. So the electrical production is pretty limited from September to March. But from March to September, we can make lots of electrons here in Vermont because of the high angle of the sun and the longer days and the more generally favorable weather conditions. So this canopy is going to be a 216 kilowatt DC structure. It's a roof that will go over our parking lot across the street, and that will produce an additional 50% of our electrical needs. And so once this project is built in the spring, assuming that we get all the permits that we need, which we're in the permitting phase right now, this will enable us to produce 60% of our total, like between the brewery and this project, we'll be able to produce 60% or more of our total electrical needs for the brewery here in Waitsfield. And I am so excited about making beer, making more sunshine beer with the sun and the solar rays out there. So it's really exciting that we can start to close the loop on our electrical needs by generating it right here on site.
That's great. Is your goal to be 100%?
Yes, we've looked at another solution, which is called being an off-taker, which is essentially making a commitment to another project somewhere else where you'll off-take the electricity produced by that project. We haven't yet moved forward with any of those because there's some of the drawback is you only get a small portion of the benefit of the power that's produced there. So in other words, it's a couple of cents per kilowatt less is what you pay for taking power from a producer that needs to find a home for the power that they produce. And so that might be a route that we go. And we're also at the same time looking at feasibility for additional solar nearby that would allow us to get to 100%. But my goal would be over the next several years that we're able to get to 100% of our electrical needs through solar power, which in Vermont is pretty amazing given that we like to joke Vermont is all about 9 months of skiing and 3 months of poor sledding. So we got a couple of other, this is a more recent outline of where the solar canopy will go. And then the next photo is a rendering of what it will look like once it's built. And one of the neat things that we're doing with this project is that we're very big on aesthetics here at Lawson. So we want it to look beautiful too. I mean, this looks beautiful to me because it's going to be producing clean, renewable energy right here on site. But that might look kind of industrial to some people. So in the next phase of the design, what we're incorporating into this is some wood overlay. Those are steel I-beams. And so we're going to set wood boards into the I-beams, both on the posts and on the long horizontal beams, and add some cross braces to give it like a timber frame post and beam type of appearance once it's all finished. So we'll have to share that with you once we have that rendering. But this gives you an idea of what the solar canopy will look like once it's built over the parking lot. And the nice thing is it gives you some shade when it's really hot hot and sunny in the summertime. And it's going to provide a snow shed roof for the parking lot. So we'll have a little bit less expense and use of fuel and salt and sand in keeping that lot clear of snow, because the snow will sit up on top of the solar panel rather than accumulating down in the parking lot, which means we aren't making any solar power then, but it is cutting down on the use of fuel and those other consumables.
People might want to drink well, knowing that their cars aren't covered in snow too, you know?
Yeah, if it's snowing, you're not going to have to brush off your car when you get out there, unless you're right on the end and it's blowing in.
Yeah.
Yeah, that looks amazing, Sean.
Yeah. All right, I'll now pass over to Levi and talk about some of the projects that YCH is doing.
Yeah, up on the screen right here, we've got our CO2 recovery system. So kind of speaking to that, kind of closing the loop that we kind of talked about beforehand. This was not our first rodeo, as they say. This has been in the works for 20 plus years. So this is located in our Sunnyside extract plant. But this thing here has kind of been modeled off of, it's been tweaked for our own design here in Sunnyside within our own facilities, but modeled off the CO2 recovery systems that you would see in some breweries and other distilleries and whatnot. But essentially we're taking what would otherwise be lost CO2 that would be vented out into the atmosphere. We're bringing that back into the production process and creating our CO2 extract. So not only is this good for the environment by lowering our emissions from CO2, we're also saving quite a bit of, I mean, this is a fairly new system, but we're going to be saving a lot of new bulk CO2, as well as the need for delivery trucks to come and go, providing us those services. So I think it's a win for the business and win for Mother Earth, and we're really excited about it. It took a lot of troubleshooting and a lot of people smarter than myself to kind of grapple with the ins and outs of this machinery here. But it's in its new home, and it's serving a great purpose within our operations.
Great.
And then, yeah. So, Sean, it was so green in a lot of those photos that you sent. Here in Yakima, it's, we're in the Palm Springs of Washington, is what they say. So it's a little drier, and we do. We're able to capture a little bit of one of those longer sunshiny days. And so solar for us was also a no-brainer, just to try to capture some sort of advantages to that extended light. So as of now, we started our solar project back in 2016. Started out with utilizing the solar tax credits just to try to get ourselves in the door and see where this could go. We've now evolved to the point where we're over 70,000 square feet large, around 38,000 or 3,800 solar panels in our entire solar array. It's non-contiguous, but with this last installation in July, we have become the largest non-contiguous solar array in Washington State. We're pretty pumped about that, and we're not done. So we, like I mentioned earlier, we purchased a building in Sunnyside with a huge square footage. So our plan is to continually each year put on new solar panels on that building, and I really like the design of the kind of the carport or the parking area that you have over there, Sean. Maybe one day, but I think at this point we're just going to try to gobble up all that square footage we have on those big warehouses before we implement something like that. And very similar, we're an energy intensive organization as well. So currently, prior to this last installment, we were only capturing around 15% of our total footprint, and I think we'll be up close to 18 to 20 with this newest installment that we had back last month. So it's a journey, not a destination, right? So we're slowly marching along, and but we're pretty excited about our facilities management team working with our local power providers to be able to get in the door and have this opportunity to pursue renewable energy such as solar. Go to the next one there. I tried to find a photo that would just kind of encompass a little bit of everything we're doing at the farm. I could literally put gobs, like probably 100 photos up here and start talking about each individual one in great detail, but I figured this would be a great, like literally 10,000 foot overview shot of what we're doing at the farm here. We're working with 50 family farms, a lot of which have been passed on from generation to generation, and we've got this kind of interesting mingle of conventional and regenerative farming going on right now. And we're kind of transitioning away from those fossil fuel intensive farming practices into like the low till regenerative agricultural practices, which are helping sequester more carbon into the soil. We're doing that through the use of cover cropping in between rows of hops, as well as pursuing salmon safe certification. So you'll see in this photograph here, we've got a waterway, which is heavily vegetated by a lot of these trees up to the right there. So, I mean, water is obviously of importance to hops. So whatever we can do to prevent any runoff from polluting those neighboring waterways, we're going to try to do so, as well as conserving water through drip irrigation. So with the advent of drip irrigation, as opposed to broadcasting, our growers are actually saving upwards of 50% of the water normally utilized in irrigation needs. So that not only is that good for them because they get to utilize that water elsewhere, because hops sometimes aren't the only crop that they're utilizing, but we're just being conscientious with like flow meters and moisture meters to determine how much water is needed to grow hops. So you really see that interesting dynamic between technology and farming here in the 21st century. And as I mentioned before, we are also, no, you're good, Andy, that's cool. That was perfect. This is a food distribution photo. As of like the last 3 months, Yakima Chief has been partnering with some local nonprofit organizations to kind of seek ways to kind of just be a good steward of land, but also of the people and communities surrounding us. So here pictured, we've got cars lining up at our Gasling Ranches location, which is out in the lower valley of Wapato, Hera, just 25 miles away from headquarters here in Yakima. But the idea was to provide those in need with sanitation for COVID-19. You know, it was a crazy deal where everybody's taking everything off the shelf. So whatever way we could provide these much needed essentials, we jumped at the opportunity to do so. In this particular photo, I think we served over 9,000 pounds of food and over 250 people individually. So it was a big day, but we partnered up with Peacekeeper Society to do this. We're always looking for opportunities to give back, and this was one that was right in our backyard, and we opted to do so there. Life cycle assessment of hop. As we mentioned, within our own operations, we're energy intensive, but really this is a snapshot of what it really takes to grow hops throughout our entire life cycle. So starting out at the farm, through harvest and farm production, all the way down to the end use and disposal of packaging products. So we do have goals to potentially become like 100% recyclable, renewable, or compostable with our packaging towards the end there, but there's been a little bit of hiccups along the way, so we're facing those challenges like with an optimistic approach. But currently, we're working with our growers through a life cycle assessment, farm specific. So we did a big life cycle assessment back in 2019, identified about 63% of the carbon emissions were coming from the farm level. So that's energy used in harvest, also in their operations. Kilns require a lot of energy as well. So the goal really was, hey, if we're going to make any changes, we need to figure out where we're at, where's our baseline. So we're currently going and doing farm specific calculations to determine where we can go from there, because currently we're looking at, the 63%. Well, what does that actually entail? So we had about 10% participate in this last pilot program. We're going to continue to go up to 100% participation in this life cycle assessment at the grower level to really identify where's areas where we can reduce our carbon footprint, our water footprint as well. As far as downstream, like I mentioned before, packaging, we're sitting right now at 95% recyclability, with that 5% making up the Mylar packaging that Sean and other brewers receive their hops in. Kind of a fun thing, what the heck's a cow doing in this cycle here? Well, after extraction, we're left with pellets that actually have about 19 to 21% protein left in the pellet. So rather than throw it away, we're sending that off to local dairy farmers to provide them with excess feed to their dairy cows. So it's kind of a fun looped system right there. But yeah, this is kind of our snapshot of what it takes in the life cycle assessment of a hop. Top cut awards. Yeah, up here we've got each year our growers get to participate in monthly seminars throughout the growing season through our Green Chief program, which is catered towards quality and sustainability efforts on the farm. We bring in a lot of experts as well as internal people from YCH to kind of talk on behalf of water conservation, energy conservation, as well as pest management and how to remediate such issues as like mites and aphids and all that stuff. So through that program, it's pretty rigorous, and a lot of people utilize this program to later on go through the Global GAP certification, which is a pretty well-renowned certification in the growing industry. But to be able to provide them with the stepping stones to get there, that's like our biggest thing. Quality is important, but also making sure that we can harvest from the land year in and year out. So is also of importance. So up here we got Pat Smith receiving 2 awards last year on behalf of Tributary and BT Loftus. So it's nice to see it come back, and we see the smiles. Growers love a little bit of competition, I think, as do everybody. So it's a fun thing that we get to participate in year out. And then I mentioned before, water is huge, right? Water is vital for life, but it's also vital for hops. And so our saying here is, healthy hops require a healthy planet. Well, it also requires a lot of water. And what are we going to do to minimize the impact of dirtying that water? How are we going to conserve our watersheds in our local areas? So we've partnered with Washington Wild Association. They're an NGO based out of Seattle with an emphasis on water conservation. The idea here is they're providing us with environmental advocacy to ensure those public lands stay public, and that the people like everybody on this call can go out and enjoy those public spaces without them being like deforested or any sort of pollution becoming an issue there. They also deal with the brewers in Washington State as well. So next month, starting in October, we're going to release the Brewshed IPA, which is a partnership with Billbreaker. It's been a fun partnership over the years, but these Washington Wild guys are a lot of fun. 2 months ago, we did a joint Zoom happy hour talking about the conservation of water and the necessary and the need for that. So a lot of water goes into brewing beer, a lot of water goes into brewing hops. So it's of utmost importance that we pursue organizations that are providing a benefit to society as well as us as an organization. So I think that's
That was one, yeah.
okay.
Great. Thanks, Levi.
Yeah.
All right, Sean, we got another question for you.
Excellent.
All right. So brewing is seen as a very social and collaborative industry. How have you seen this collaborative effort also take effect in environmental and philanthropic projects at the level?
Well, it was a perfect segue that Levi ended with the Brewshed Alliance, because we have a Vermont Brewshed Alliance too that just started this year, and so a number of breweries, a good handful of our Vermont breweries, were eager, right, as soon as it was announced that one of our environmental stewards, Vermont Natural Resources Council, announced this effort to get breweries and other businesses actively working to help protect the watershed, but the brew shed where we all depend on clean water to make high quality beer, both conserving water, but also actively working to ensure that we're protecting water quality through legislative action. And so another kind of corollary to that the brewers were already working on over the last couple of years is something that the Vermont Brewers Association helped get going along with the state of Vermont's Department of Environmental Conservation. And that is our green cohort. And so we have a number of breweries that have signed up and are a part of the green cohort in Vermont for breweries. And so what that means is that we've agreed to measure a number of sustainability benchmarks about energy consumption and wastewater and ingredients and recycling and solid and liquid waste reduction, and that we benchmark our results and share those results with the other breweries. And then we collaborate to work on innovative ways to reduce our impact and or make our operations more efficient. So those are the two sort of primary collaborative efforts here in Vermont relative to sort of efficiency and sustainability. But you did mention environmentalism, and Levi touched on one of your programs. We've shifted that focus a little bit in the last few months to also just more food and economic insecurity. So we're also a distribution point for free meals once a week called shift meals. And then we've kind of refocused some of our charitable giving program to organizations that support racial and social justice over the last couple of months. So those are important efforts for us as well.
Thanks, Sean. Another question for you is, what goes into your decisions when partnering with an organization to support via the Sunshine Fund program? And could you just speak on behalf of the program and how it works?
Yeah, our social impact program is the umbrella for the Sunshine Fund. And our Sunshine Fund is a program that in our tap room where we, in lieu of tips, our service staff, instead of working for minimum wage and tips, we don't accept tips at Lawson's Finest, but they encourage folks to make donations to the nonprofit organization that we happen to have on tap for the Sunshine Fund. And we rotate through a new organization every month or every 2 weeks, depending on the period that we're in. And the factors that going into selecting the Sunshine Fund recipients are what our core values are for our social impact program. Healthy communities is number one, and that starts with food and economic security. So we support nonprofit organizations here in Vermont that work towards food and economic security for all different types of groups of people. And in light of the renewed focus on systemic racism in this country and the need for us as a society to work towards a greater equity and a more just society, we've really shifted that towards both in addition to food and economic security, but to organizations that are working here in Vermont towards social and racial justice in the last 3 or 4 months. So that's really the focus. And then finally, the other component to our Sunshine Fund and the Social Impact Program is conserving our beloved Green Mountains. So we also donate to organizations that work on behalf of conserving wild and natural areas, as well as supporting sustainable recreation here in the Valley. So trails organizations like the Mad River Riders for mountain biking, and the Backcountry Skiers Alliance that's part of the Catamount Trail Association, the Green Mountain Club, those type of organizations. And organizations once a year can apply for the Sunshine Fund. We have information on our website about that. And then finally, we do quite a bit of discretionary giving too. So if a need arises throughout the year outside of that Sunshine Fund program, which are the largest gifts that we give, we do quite a bit of discretionary giving to respond to needs that align with our core values.
Yeah, I was actually on your website earlier this week, and the Little Sip IPA Strava Challenge kind of caught my eye. So I know looking at a map, you guys are really close to is it Mad River Glen? Am I saying that correctly? Yes.
Yeah.
Like that ski area looks amazing, but the trail systems you guys have in place up there look great as well. So any opportunity to get people outside, I think is an awesome initiative, especially when you're in a lush green environment like you guys are up there in Vermont.
Yeah, that boardwalk we saw connects right to the Mad River Path, which is a series of pathways and sections of boardwalk, single track, and sidewalk throughout the Mad River Valley.
That's awesome.
There's mountain bike trails that are real nearby, and Sugarbush is the other ski area that's right here in the valley as well. So we get a lot of skiers in the winter.
That's great.
All right, another question for you, Sean. How has COVID affected Lawson's sustainability strategy?
I see we're coming up on the top of the hour, Andy, but what I would say is I think, most of what I've said has, I've kind of asked that. What we did is we pivoted, our social impact program to really focus on emergency giving that's related to economic insecurity. So people who have lost their jobs, by serving as a point for distribution of free meals, and then by shifting some of our giving over to social and racial justice issues. But it hasn't really affected our sustainability efforts. Thankfully, our business remains strong. So it's changed. We've pivoted to a drive-through model for our tap room, and limited on-premise service over the summer, outside only. But thankfully, our distribution business remains strong, retail sales remain strong. And so we're able to move ahead with that solar project and continue to invest, even though there's a lot more uncertainty out there in the world than there was, 8 months ago.
Sure. And Levi, what about YCH?
Yeah, I would say the same. It's obviously been a tumultuous year up to this point, and we're just kind of all, I think, chomping at the bit until 2021 occurs. But really identifying the immediate need around in our communities has been our biggest area of focus. We've had traditionally our buckets that we'd like to hit, but this has brought unprecedented issues up to YCH as a global need. So just trying to step up to the plate through organizations such as the All Together movement, providing funding for essential workers, and like the food distribution that we're doing as well. So I would also say that our sustainability efforts are always progressing. We're just kind of bummed that we don't have as many people around during virtual harvest as we would have last year. But other than that, we're still sticking to our path and moving along.
Great. And last question for you, Sean, is any advice, recommendations for fellow brewers that you'd like to offer regarding sustainability?
Well, my one piece of advice that I think is so many other brewers have adopted already, and they realize that it's good for your business, both from a values perspective and for the bottom line. From a business perspective of it helps your economics if you're being more efficient, if you're conserving resources. But recommendations also would be is if you, maybe your brewery hasn't taken a close look at what's happening regarding sustainability in your state, is that if you're looking for resources, you can start with the Brewers Association, has an amazing set of resources online. And then there's likely some things happening with your state guild, or maybe, you know, in your state with public-private partnerships with the state government that could help actually provide some funding or some expertise, technical assistance with your sustainability efforts. If it's part of your goal to be a more sustainable brewery, lower your carbon footprint and improve the bottom line at the same time.
Awesome. Thanks, Sean. All right, Sean, I got a quick quiz for you. They're easy, they're Vermont-based, and some of them are environmental-based. Are you ready?
Ready.
All right, you got to fill in the blank here. The solution to pollution is?
Green jeans.
That's part of it. Dilution was the answer I was looking for.
Dilution, yes.
Second one, does MGD stand for Miller Genuine Draft or million gallons per day?
Million gallons per day.
All right, I'll take that.
Although Miller Genuine Draft was, I have to admit, was one of those beers in my early beer drinking days where I looked at as a more flavorful, high quality beer.
Sure. It's
kind of those gold cans.
Yeah. What is the Vermont state bird?
Hermit thrush.
Yes. And then the Vermont state tree.
Sugar maple, of course.
And is the maple syrup better in Vermont or Canada?
Of course, Vermont.
Okay.
Although Canada produces quite a bit more by volume, Vermont is the #1 producer in the United States of maple syrup.
Our Canadian rep swears by Canadian maple syrup. I've never had it yet, so I can't say whether I like it more, but he's a pretty big advocate about it. So I might have to do a maple syrup test. Yeah. And the last question is, what is the greatest sustainable IPA in all the land right now, Sean? Sip.
Sip of Sunshine?
Yeah.
Of course, that's a biased answer, but
I know.
I call out my own bias. Or as some people, a wise person that I know once said, we're all carrying baggage. We just have to realize that sometimes it's getting in the way of where you want to go.
Nice. Well, I just want to thank you again for participating. I think it was a great discussion. Is there anything else you wanted to say before we sign off here?
Cheers.
Cheers.
And thank you for hosting. Really appreciate being a part of your virtual event this week, the virtual hop school, and adapting to doing things remotely. I appreciate being invited to share our experience with those folks that tuned in today.
Great. Thanks, Sean.
Thank you, Andy.
Yeah, thanks
Sean.
everyone so much. We really appreciate your time and all the great and valuable information you've shared. And just a quick thing, remind everybody that the session was recorded, so this will be posted on virtualharvest.com here within the hour, as well as on the Whova event app that we're using. And for those that are watching this later, feel free, if you have any questions, to email brewschool@yakimachief.com. And if you have any brewing related questions, we also have an in-house team that can help answer those at brewinghelp@yakimachief.com. Other than that, thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you guys for presenting. Special thank you again to Sean. I hope you all have a great rest of your week. Thank you so much. Bye all.